I thought I'd do a quick video review of this 64 Dodge 330 kit released by Lindberg. Now I know there's several videos online of these kits, so for that very reason, this isn't going to be an unboxing because, well, you see the kit's already built, but instead I thought I'd go over some of the challenges and issues I had building the kit. So from what I gather, Lindberg, a company that had been around for quite some time, has since been sold in more recent years to another company. So for that reason, I don't know if this kit is still sold under the Lindberg brand. I don't know if Lindberg is still even a brand. This kit might no longer be available. But with that said, it's got a copyright date of 2006, but I do know that this kit was sold well into the 2010s. I can't recall exactly when I got this kit, several years ago. Could be 5 years ago, might even be more like 7-8 years ago. I do not recall exactly when, but I do recall I got it on clearance. Can't remember where I got it from. Good chance it was either Michael's, the craft shop, or even Walmart clearing them out. But for that very reason, because they were clearance, I got 2 of them. Now they sat on my shelf basically unbuilt, with the exception of the fact that I painted this body really quickly years ago. But just recently I thought, you know what, I'm going to build this up and have some fun with it. Now this kit comes with 2 engines, one being the 383 that I built it with, and the other one being 225 slant 6. From what I hear, this actually has one of the most detailed slant 6 engines in any model kit, but I can't confirm because I haven't built any others. What I do know about this kit is it's basically a rehashed mishmash of parts from other kits using old tooling. Now, I'm sure this kit was sold in one form or another under different brands, but the basis of this kit and the tooling can be found in the 64 Dodge 330 drag cars. So the Ram Chargers and Color Me Gone, just to name a couple. And that's very apparent when you see the parts trees. Now, it's evident that the tooling is old and it's not very clean because there's a lot of flash on the parts trees. Nearly every other part needed to be trimmed and fixed up so I could use them. But beyond that, there was a lot of miscellaneous parts that basically had no explanation. Having seen some of these other kits and built some of these other kits, I knew what some of these parts were for. But there was components to roll cages and stuff like that. So that's how you know they basically had parts of this one kit servicing many others. Even the hood, the back side of the hood has 2 cutouts for a cross ram where you'd put basically a hood scoop on if you were building a max wedge drag car. Anyway, the kit itself built up, I'd say fairly well if you're an intermediate to advanced level modeler. Now, I'm by no means a professional, but I've been building model kits since I was just a little kid. So some of the issues I faced with this, I was able to work around. One of the major issues, though, if I could just slide the hood off here, I didn't bother with the hinge system on the hood because it's quite cumbersome, and I knew I just basically keep the hood off most of the time anyway. There's 383. The biggest issue I faced with this kit, like I said before, was parts not fitting correctly. If you look at some of the built versions of this kit online, not that there's too many in stock trim, but if you're able to find some, you'll notice the wheelbase on most of them don't necessarily fall where they should on the real car. And it's kind of interesting that no one's talked about this online, which is why I wanted to make this video. But most of the kits I saw, if the back wheel was where it was supposed to be, the front wheel was actually shoved much further up into the wheel well. And near as I can tell, it's not the modeler's fault. It's more or less the kit's fault. Because if you put everything where Lindberg suggests, it doesn't line up. So I'll start before I show those issues. I'll start by saying, again, that being a retooled kit, there was a lot of old, basically unidentified parts And beyond that, the instructions looked like they were photocopied 1,000 times, and they were really blurry. And some of the numbers, I won't dig the instructions out, but some of the numbers didn't correspond with the part in question. Be it a starter in the instructions being, number 61, but on your tree it was number 59, and 61 was a radiator hose. I'm just using that, off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. But I ran into a little bit of that building this. So in that regard, you have to have a bit of familiarity with either this kit or other kits like it, or just the car itself, or general working knowledge of cars, to kind of know what's what and what goes where, because the instructions at times leave a lot to be desired. Now, going back to the wheelbase issue, when I first put it together, my front wheel actually lined up where it needed to be, but my back wheel was shoved about 1/8 of an inch into the back of the wheel well, and it really looked off. Basically, the back wheel was way too far backwards. So I think why modelers are finding themselves with the front wheel shoved forward is that looks a little more normal than having your back wheel too far back. But realistically, both are incorrect, because to do that, they're basically shoving the entire chassis forward to be able to fit everything in there. So what I ended up doing, because I wanted things to look how they should, was on the back, I took off the leaf spring after I mounted it, and I realized, things really look off. I took these two leaf springs, I should say. I took the back suspension and the axle off, and I cut a section out of both leaf springs in the front, and as you can see, they butt against these almost like torque boxes or cross sections of the frame. So I cut a good chunk of that off, and I also cut a bit of the drive shaft off. I just shortened the drive shaft to be able to move the rear axle and rear wheels forward. So I did that, test fitted a couple times, and I finally got it exactly where I wanted it. Now that was good, but that was only half of the issues I had on the kit. Another issue I had was the rear bumper fitment. Excuse the dust on this black paint. When you take a video, it looks way dustier than it does in person. But with the back the back bumper still doesn't quite sit where it should and where the kit basically dictates. So what I basically had to do was trial and error with glue, seeing what contact points the back bumper make to the actual frame, or the chassis, I guess, this lower tub, because they don't really, the only parts of the body they touch are the bottom of this license plate bracket. Now, lastly, one other issue I had was with these taillights. These taillights were really difficult. If you saw these taillights off, there is a pin in the middle of these center taillights, and then there's a pin on the outer taillight on the very edge, and that's supposed to go into a hole on the body. Well, the center pins, or the center taillights, the pins lined up with a little bit of twisting and a little bit of opening up of those holes with an X-Acto knife. They worked. But the outer taillights, they absolutely did not. And in fact, not only did they not line up with the holes in the body, but they basically, those pins made the taillights sit totally wrong. So what I ended up doing is I sanded those pins completely off, or sliced them off and shaved them off with an X-Acto knife, and just glued them there. Not necessarily the easiest thing, getting them lined up, a little difficult, but needed to be done. And so those were the major issues I ran into with the kit. Again, going back, there was a lot of parts that weren't properly identified. Things like, I think the starter was one of them, and just a lot of vagueness about the kit. The kit did come with 2 sets of seats. There was the buckets, as you can see, and a bench. The bench actually didn't have a backing to it, which is unusual. In all the other reviews, I see their parts trees came with a rear portion of the bench, basically a seat back. So for that very reason, obviously I went with the buckets. But if your instructions mention one, but you only have the other parts, be mindful of that. You know, you're not going crazy. It's probably your kit's missing parts, or your instructions don't quite apply for this exact kit, but you do the best you can. Overall, if I had to rate this kit on a scale of, you know, being difficult or easy, you know, 1 being very easy, 10 being very difficult, I give this about a 5. Definitely not a kit for a beginner, more of a kit for an intermediate or professional. Now, I don't consider myself a professional, but I'm sure a pro could do a whole lot more with this kit than I did. But you do have to either have a working knowledge of this kit or just of cars in general, and the ability to kind of test fit things and modify things to get them to fit. Otherwise, this kit's not going to go together nicely. It's definitely not going to go together if you just, you know, take the parts right off the tree as they are and don't clean up all the flashing. I'll tell you that right now. So just for that basis alone, this is more or less recommended for someone with an intermediate knowledge that's built a few kits and knows their way around modeling. Lastly, in regards to the body lines and stuff, the body was relatively crisp. But with that said, I didn't do any of the detailing with like silver foil or anything like that, because they're not crisp enough, like this body line. After I laid paint on it, and by the way, there's only maybe 2 coats, very thin coats of paint here, single stage. They weren't crisp enough to really pick up foil and stuff, as you can see. So instead what I did was I just kind of left it. I like the look as is, the all black look, and I thought, you know, given my my limited abilities, I just leave it as is. But with regards to the decals, there are a few decals. There's a couple of Dodge emblems that go on either side, and some very vague gauges. The decal kit's kind of trash. Most people will throw half them out. The gauge clusters, you can see, they are already molded in chrome, so you can detail them with a paint pen or something if you wanted. Not quite sure why they also have decal overlays, but whatever. Anyway, on that note, just wanted to point out, like I said, the few issues I had with this Dodge 330 kit. If you can pick one of these up cheap enough, or if you have the skill, it's definitely worth trying out. Like I said, I had 2 of these kits. I had to open up a second kit just to get all the parts, because the first kit I had, the one that I painted the body out of, it turns out the parts trees were all warped and whatnot. But funny enough, in the second kit, in the second box, the body was completely twisted like that, right out of the box. So basically, it took 2 kits to make one. Not too happy about that, but again, I remember when I picked these up, I think I paid about $7 or $8 a piece, so it was no big deal. But be mindful when you buy these. It's probably better to either buy one that's already been opened so you can verify the condition and that the parts trees aren't all warped and stuff, or don't pay a lot for it, because I'd hate to see someone pay a lot of money for this and have their heart broken when they open it. Anyway, happy modeling. Thanks for watching my video.